recording and you fantastic. So a pleasant morning, everyone. It's good to have every one of us here. Particularly, we have our host here. Usually, Farmalat has been on the forefront of holding capacity meetings as such for veterinarians across the country. This one in particular is unique because we got an invitation from the veterinarians in Yobe State to facilitate a meeting that helps them prepare for emergencies such as the current anthrax outbreak that we are having. And we have hearkened and assembled a very awesome and well-competent hub experts to help us handle this clearly. Today, I'm going to be moderating the session all through, and I will also be introducing every of our help experts. As a way of introduction, please, you permit me to share my screen just a moment to share my screen and get the meeting up and running. Good to see every one of us. I will be introducing us one after the other when the time comes. All right, so this is a capacity building workshop in partnership with Yobe State Nvma. The Nvma simply means the Nigerian Veterinary Medical Association. And today we are going to be talking on the topic livestock disease surveillance and outbreak management. We wanted to open this up, but again, I think we will have a wider audience after this class. Our partners are, as you know, Farmalat, MDoc, Boringa Inglehem, Making More Health, and Ashoka. And I'll quickly run through the agenda for today so that we can set the stage clearly. I'll be doing the introduction. I'll also be giving a brief about Farmalat. We will have the welcome address by the State Chairman, Nvma, Dr. Bulama Meina Yaro. He is going to be giving us a welcome address. Unfortunately, we're going to be having the permanent secretary, who is equally a vet, Minister of Agriculture and Natural Resources, Yobe State, Dr. Musa Abba, joining us to formally open the event as the chairman of the occasion. Once he does that, we will be having our first class for the day by Dr. Teki, who is going to be talking about livestock disease surveillance specifically. And of course, our own admired in Rome, Professor Folorenshaw Fashina, who is the Global Coordinator, One Health Epidemic Intelligence and Early Warning, FAO in Rome, will be now talking on disease outbreak management. So we are now also, after his class, be taking a case study on the anthrax outbreak in Nigeria and the level of preparedness in Yobe State by the Yobe State Director of Veterinary Services. After this, we will open it up to a participatory session where we can all ask questions and understand each other. Then we will have the hub experts, that's Dr. Teki, Professor Folorenshaw, and the DVS also attend to wrap up the conclusion of the meeting. Once that is done, we will take goodwill messages being anchored by the host, Dr. Bulama Yaro. And of course, we will have announcement and next step. So that's about the rundown of the activity for today. So ECHO, we have 4 pillars. We use video conferencing technology to leverage scarce resources. We specialize in sharing best practices with colleagues. We use case-based learning. As it is today, we are going to be learning from the preparedness. We're going to be benchmarking Yobe State preparedness. We all must have learned from Dr. Teki and Professor Folorenshaw, and we're going to be giving them a score. That will be an interesting time. We leverage on, we take registrations, and then of course, your data are private. The sessions will be recorded, and the slides, the PDF version of the slides will be shared with you after this meeting. So if you will, we've muted everybody except the co-host just to maintain a level of decorum and quietness throughout the meeting, but you can leave your cameras on. Hands, the Zoom has a raise hand feature, or you could drop affordable animal health care in underserved communities in Nigeria. So we have distribution centers across 4 states in Nigeria, and we're serving over 20 states with easy to access animal health inputs, feeds, drugs, vaccines. And we're also at the forefront of distributing vaccines across the country. Conservatively, we've been able to distribute almost 1 million doses of anthrax from the beginning of the outbreak in Nigeria. And that's an interesting feat for every one of us. We pride ourselves that we are the chief servants, ensuring that vets are served the best knowledge, the best product, the best service at every given time. So right now, I want to introduce formally all our hub experts. Professor Forelonshaw, as I said initially, is a global coordinator, One Health Epidemic Intelligence and Early Warning in Rome. That's the FAO headquarters. He was formerly in Nairobi, leading the project there until recently, where he was transferred to the FAO headquarters to be the global coordinator. He has been one of the phenomenal hub experts that we've had in almost all our TechLab sessions. Then we have Dr. Teki Ishai Aseni, who heads the division Rabies Diagnosis and Research in the National Veterinary Research Institute, VOM. Good to let us know that VOM next year will be 100 years. The National Veterinary Research Institute is an institute we are all proud of. Proudly to say one of the best in West Africa, if not Africa, churning out vaccines. The director said in our last conversation with her that they are ready to produce over 10 million doses at a go when we are set. And we've never seen that level of proactivity. So Dr. Sini has a DVM in Maiduguri, MSc University of Ibadan, and of course his PhD also in University of Ibadan. We are honored to be going to be having the Permanent Secretary, Minister of Agriculture and Natural Resources, Yobe, who is going to be serving as the chairman of today's occasion, and also proudly a vet. To be, we're proud to have you here and have you join us and add a voice to the capacity building that you are engineering through the Nvma chairman in Yobe State. We are also going to be having the Director of Veterinary Services, Dr. Ilyasu Meina Yusuf, is coming in. And of course, I wouldn't want to use the word he's going to be on the hot seat, but again, when you see his level of preparedness, I think it's something we're going to be proud of. We are, after the 2 lectures, we're going to be hearing from him on what Yobe State is doing, and also using that as a guideline to see that other states emulate their level of preparedness so that we will have minimal outbreaks. And even if it occurs, it can quickly be nipped in the bud and we can have it done with as quick as possible. The NVRI director in a conversation last week was saying that we've not recorded a trace of anthrax for the last 20 years. Now that it's coming on board, meetings like these are utmostly very important. Of course, we have our host, the Nvma chairman, Yobe State, Dr. Bulama Meina Yaro, who in his ingenuity has put together this program for the veterinarians in Yobe State and has put together almost all the stakeholders in Yobe State to be part of this amazing class. Having said that, I want to bring up Dr. Bula Mayaro, Meina to give us an opening remark. Backend, if you could please kindly just spotlight him and then put him on the spot so that he can give us his opening remark. All right, Backend, have you seen him?
Hello?
Dr. Femi?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
I'm experiencing echo here. Is it only me or other participants
are
are also
experiencing echo?
Serious
probably
echo.
There's somebody.
Hello? Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay.
Good
Are
morning.
others experiencing echo also? Backend.
I think he has I think he has
Nancy.
double devices. Disconnect one.
Okay, but was my voice echoing?
No, no, it's clear here.
No.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right. So,
was,
Dr.
yeah,
Bulama,
at my
if
end,
you could
it was...
just please, yes, turn on your video. Okay. So I need to be sure that my voice is clear. I hear Dr. Booker saying
Yes.
it's not clear.
From this
Dr.
end,
Booker, can you
your
type?
voice is clear.
Okay, my voice is clear.
From
All
this
right, so
end.
Dr. Bulama Diaro, can you please kindly turn on your video? If you can turn on your video, and then if you have any other person with any device where you are, I think it will be appropriate you either tell the person to join you or move to another location. So, Dr. Bulama, are you set? Because he is supposed to introduce the permanent, after his welcome address, introduce the permanent secretary, and then we can go into the main discussion for the day. First, from Dr. Techie, from Dr. Techie, who is going to be taking just 20 minutes. I wonder how he's going to rush through his slides. I see his slides, and I know he has just 20 minutes. And then we are now going to also be taking Professor Fashino for 30 minutes. Then we get to hear from the state DVS. Then we'll open up the discussion. What we want to do with this class is to open up a model to have states prepare for an outbreak. And the more we do this simulation, I think the better it will be for the entire profession. All right, Dr. Yaro, you are being spotlighted. Can you?
Yes, yes, I'm back. Hello?
Sir.
Can you hear from me?
Yes, we can hear from you, but if you could move slightly closer to your phone, it could be a lot better. Good.
Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me well now?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Okay. I've just been speaking with my permanent secretary. He was trying to join the meeting. So I'm sure any moment from now, he'll be part of this very important occasion. For the sake of the agenda, let me very quickly deliver my welcome remarks as I was asked by the moderator, Dr. Femi, the chairman of this very important occasion. Participant, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me say a very big thank you for all the participants for having you in this very important platform. We all believe that animal health is a very dynamic discipline and therefore requires regular training and retraining, especially in the current phase of outbreak of anthrax in this country. This program is designed to increase the effectiveness and efficiency of all the participants to improve their performance, which can lead to better service delivery and increased productivity in our respective places of work. Many of us, if not all, are already in the field. And to combat this outbreak, we have a huge role to play in surveillance, awareness creation, case management, as well as mass animal vaccination. This training will further boost the morale of all the participants to address the disease of public health important, while having resource persons of international repute. On this note, I want to thank His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Yobe State, Honorable Nvma Buni, for being the first executive governor in this country to champion the cause of pre-mass vaccination against anthrax by himself. I also like to passionately thank the leadership of the Ministry of Agriculture and Natural Resources, the Permanent Secretary, Dr. Musa Abba Kolere, for providing the leadership role and the support to ensure that this event is a successful one. I also like to thank my DBS, Dr. Yusuf Ilyas Umaina, for being proactive in managing a disease of public health important like anthrax. Let me express my profound appreciation to our resource persons. To begin with Professor Florencio Pashina, the global coordinator of One Health Epidemic Intelligence and Early Warning, Food and Agricultural Organization headquarters at Rome, as well as Dr. Teki Ishaya, the head division of Rabies Diagnostic and Research, National Veterinary Research Institute, for being part of this, and of course for participating in this very important event. You have distinguished yourself as resource person of international repute, and this very important event is welcoming to tap from your vast knowledge and experiences in the field. And we hope that all participants will have a take-up message by the end of this very important training, which shall be useful not only in combating the current phase of outbreak, but it shall be useful to our career as public servants. I cannot underestimate the support of our own, the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Transport and Energy, Yobe State, our Deputy Director, Veterinary Services, our own, again, the Executive Secretary, State Emergency Management Agency, the Program Manager, Yobe State Pilot License Development Program, for their huge support to this association and to ensure that this event is a very successful one. I want to thank our partner, the Farm Alert under the leadership of Dr. Femi Kayode. I cannot thank you enough. I cannot remember how many times I spoke with you ever since we have been making effort to ensure that this event is feasible. Even during the odd hours, I often give you a call and you pick my calls. You ensure that these resource persons are on board. I don't know how magic you use, but I cannot, these associations continue to hold you in a high esteem. And this partnership, we hope that it shall be better way for the future. The Executive Council of the State Chapter of Nvma, I cannot express my feelings from the first day when we came up with this initiative. You are a good team player. I hope and I pray that you will maintain this status for the betterment of our association and the profession as well. This training has participants who are non-vet. We have para-vet. We as well have some interested participants who are found in the cycle of One Health concept. So I want to thank you enough that combating zoonotic diseases is a collective responsibility. So I want to thank you enough for taking an interest and to ensure that We have this event very essential. Cycle of One Health concept. I wish to welcome each and every one of us to this platform, and I urge that we should pay a very serious attention so that we can benefit from this very important occasion. Long live Nvma, long live Yobe State, long live Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you, everyone. It's over from me.
Thank you so much, Chairman. Just to also reiterate that, you know, you are a go-getter. So we had a lot of back and forth. You insisted, and thankfully for us, the event is opening, and we are right in the middle of it. Just to state that for some people who cannot hear us, I see Dr. The Permanent Secretary join, but he has not joined with his audio. There's a mic icon in the Zoom platform, most likely by your far left. Once you click on it, you click join by audio. Somebody needs to talk to. There are 4 or 5 persons who has joined with their video but haven't joined with their audio. So that would be necessary, especially for the Permanent Secretary. I see him, but he said he cannot hear anything, and that's the issue. Because once you don't join with your audio, you will not be able to hear. Okay, so I think he has done that. Okay, fantastic. I think he has done that. So back end, if you can see Dr. Kolere, I hope I pronounced the name well, Dr. Musa, can you just kindly make him, yes, a co-host, so that he can unmute himself and then formally open up this meeting? Fantastic, fantastic. Sir, you can unmute yourself and please spotlight him. So let's welcome the Permanent Secretary from the ministry, who is also the chairman of today's training. As I said initially, we are focused on Yobe State, and we are specialized in ensuring that there's capacity building for all the vet doctors in Yobe State. More importantly, that Yobe is prepared for every outbreak, and we have been able to assemble the hub experts we have today. Luckily, we have the Permanent Secretary amidst us. Sir, over to you. Kindly help us say your presentation and also declare the capacity workshop open.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
Loud and clear, sir.
Good morning, everybody. Let me just begin by welcoming all of us here today for this very important meeting. Sorry for joining late. I've been trying to catch up since 10 o'clock, but I could not up until now. This workshop, that is the livestock disease surveillance and outbreak management, is very important to us here in Yobe State because, as you rightly said, we are a vet state and we are a state with a large number of livestock. We have about 7 million livestock, that is cattle, sheep, goat, camels, horses, donkeys, and you know, it's our natural resource, and we take very important steps in order to improve them, especially with the coming of this government that has shown political will to do that. And let me mention here that we are already developing about 3 large grazing reserves, you know, to turn them into livestock hubs where we can improve production, provide the basic infrastructure into the grazing reserve, like water, dams, pasture, you know, and all those veterinary hospital, veterinary clinic, dispensary, and all those things that will make livestock production very successful. And we have almost 90% or 95% completed the first phase. We are moving into the second phase, hopefully by the end of this year. And we believe it is through this kind of development that we can attract private investment into the livestock subsector, and we hope with the coming of the cargo airport, this will be a very important step in improving livestock value chain and even exporting our livestock products. So this topic, disease surveillance and outbreak management, I think it's very important to us because surveillance is a key in trying to find out the level or the incidence of any disease at any given time. So it will be very important for us, especially now we are trying to attract a lot of livestock. So by surveillance, we'll be able to know the kind of diseases that are of very economic importance to us and to detect them in good time and to determine the risk factors or the predisposing factors that are important to the disease, and also to find out the population of animals at risk of this kind of disease. It's all through surveillance that we'll be able to achieve this kind of diagnosis. And you all know that surveillance is much, much cheaper than trying to, treat diseases, because by surveillance, you try to prevent, and also prevention always is better than treatment in terms of cost and even effectiveness. So surveillance is going to be a key factor in our livestock production, because we have the manpower and we are trying to improve the infrastructure so that it will be very easy for us. Every now and then we'll be able to survey and see even the effect of our vaccinations can be ascertained by surveillance, because it is through surveillance that we'll be able to determine the take-in of the vaccines that we are administering. And we all know that One Health has shown that animal diseases are very important globally now, because as you can see, as we all witness in the last few years, zoonotic diseases are one of the most fatal diseases that we find in our societies now, especially if you take into consideration the COVID outbreak, the Lassa fever, the Ebola, avian influenza, and others. So we cannot underestimate the importance of veterinary diseases and the importance of surveillance, to keep track of diseases and emerging trends in the diseases. So I welcome everybody to this very important workshop, and I hope that our vets and our officers will be well educated by the end of this program on how to go about modern steps in surveillance and the impact it will create in our society. And just yesterday, the federal government has inaugurated the Executive Council, and you have seen the importance the federal government attached to agriculture and food security. And we all know that the state minister for agriculture is a vet, is a veterinary doctor from Niger State. And even the state government here in our state, the Yobe state government, we have a lot of veterinary doctors in management capacities. So the political will is there, and our governor has shown interest in developing livestock, in developing agriculture in general, and livestock in particular. And I think this will go a long way in trying to improve value chain in livestock production and create wealth, employment, and improve the revenue base of the state. I thank everybody for coming to this meeting. I'm very sorry for joining in late. And by these few remarks, I wish to declare this workshop open, and I wish us happy deliberations. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, the honorable doctor that we have leading us as the permanent secretary in Yobe State. What a joy to see the strides that the state under your leadership is making. You mentioned you have over 7 million cattle, the grazing reserve that you're creating, the coordination between you and the vet doctors in the field. It's amazing. And we want to thank you for joining this meeting. Now, as you have declared the capacity workshop open, I think it's just fair to go into what we have for today. We are going to be having 2 lectures from 2 different persons. And the first is going to be from Dr. Ishaya Teki, who is heading the division of rabies and diagnosis in the National Veterinary Research Institute. He's going to be talking specifically on surveillance for 20 minutes, after which we're going to be taking Professor Fashinot for 30 minutes, who is going to be talking about outbreak management. Now, if you will, I want to hand over the stage to Dr. Ishaya Teki to take the next 20 minutes. Doc, your time starts now, and then I will come in 5 minutes before your time finishes, so that we can keep to the time. All right, to everyone, have a wonderful time listening and learning.
Thank you, everyone. All protocol duly observed. The topic before us today is livestock disease surveillance. Can we move to the next slide?
Thank you. Dr. Siniteki, you're welcome.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
My classmate.
Yes, we are classmates.
Oh, fantastic.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Disease epidemics has caused countries, whether developing or developed countries, to focus attention on livestock diseases and their potential to hamper development and food security. We know what pest has caused us in this country and in Africa at large, when the first panzootic of the disease 85 to 1890, causing death over 90% of cattle population, followed by another occurrence in 1913 to 1914 that reduced cattle population from 9 million to 2.7 million only. And some of us are old enough to remember the occurrence of resurgence of disease in the early 80s in Nigeria that reduced cattle population. In the context of developing countries, we want to see what epidemics do, what impact epidemics have. It reduces herds and flock dramatically, leading to major blow to food security and ability to survive. This is one impact epidemic disease cause of cattle population and the survival of the owners and the country. Trading partners also put barriers in place in order to protect their own country from infection. No country would like to import animals or animal products from any country that is infected with a particular disease. Where livestock or meat exporting countries are affected, definitely you know is going to have impact on their foreign exchange. So they would like to avoid trade business with a country that has recorded an epidemics. It also drives farmers and local meat industry to the world with nothing to do. I heard what happened during the rinderpest outbreak in the early 80s, where a lot of livestock holders had real problems and complications. And as a result, national governments must realize animal disease surveillance is a key function of their national veterinary services. Next slide, please. So what is surveillance? Just to see briefly, it's a continuous and ongoing systematic collection, analysis, and interpretation of data. It also has to do with timely dissemination of information generated from the data collected. And we can also, so surveillance is all regular activities that is aimed at ascertaining the health status of a given population. Now we are talking about livestock population with the aim of early detection. The earlier we detect this condition, the better, and as well as control of animal diseases of importance to national economics and food security as well as trade. Passive surveillance, on the other hand, is a regular and perhaps infrequent visit to area by veterinary officers to assess the local animal situation and determine livestock population. You see veterinarians and other animal health workers carrying out meat inspection in the abattoirs. Reports are generated on daily basis when animals are submitted for tests and diagnosis in various animal health facilities. These are all passive surveillance. It includes voluntary disease reporting by farmers, traders, and perhaps the individual as a private veterinarian. This falls under the category of passive surveillance. Next slide. On the other hand, active surveillance has to do with frequent and intensive efforts, deliberate efforts to establish prevalence of disease in an area. It can be an intensive, time-consuming venture for a country. However, the benefit in the long run will outweigh the cost. How will I say that? Because when we carry out active surveillance, we stand the ability of pains. Now, because of effectiveness of surveillance, rinderpest has been controlled over the world, and vaccination is no longer being done against it. A lot of money is saved on that. It also gained trade benefits. Eventual proof of disease, eventual proof of disease absent of disease-free will allow operators that are interested in importing your animals and animal products. Essentially, surveillance is for planning, implementation, and evaluation of public and livestock practices. It is important for any country. Next slide. Now, I want us to zero in on surveillance in resource-poor countries. We don't have all the resources, but we can still do something. It can be a problem actually in developing countries because of cost implications, because it is seen as a very cost implicating, and because of that, resources are needed. But there's a way around it. It needs not to be as such. Judicious deployment of resources, both human and material resources, can be done in order to achieve desired result. Next slide. Let's see what we are going to do that. Next slide. Now, one important thing to do is to consider critical point identification. There are critical points a developing country needs to identify in order to be able to use the low and lean resources to carry out surveillance. The first step is set up a low-cost surveillance system involves identifying critical points or critical surveillance area. This includes areas reported outbreak of disease of anthrax in the Yobe state. Definitely government officials rally around to identify what specific animal population direct threat to that infection. If it is at the border, crossing border, the country will definitely take measures that is there for the disease to spread. Another area to look at slaughter slabs near migration routes, where animals congregate, there's possibility of spread of disease. Auction point, livestock markets, and other livestock assembly points are also in order to focus human and material resources to carry out surveillance and control the disease. Abattoir large are assembled there. Next slide. Next slide. Now, resource development. After identification of critical points, there is need to plan deployment of the lean resources available. The bulk of veterinary resources should be deployed at the critical points, not to spread it all over the country, but such resources should be directed to places where there is risk, where animal population is high, where there are border crossing, and so on and so forth. Strategic resource deployment, however, may clash with political will. Sometimes some representatives from other zones of the country may say, oh, my own area needs resources, my own area, but the area that has challenge at the material time should be focused upon, carefully explaining to such representatives that, look, this is a time of need. We need to channel the resources we have towards where there is need for now, and subsequently, such resources will be equally distributed. Next slide. Now, surveillance frequency, what is the frequency of surveillance? How frequent it should be carried out is determined by the perceived risk of each point. When you look at borders, for example, you look at border, how risky is it for disease to cross over, to spread from one country to another through the border? That will determine what the frequency of surveillance activities to take place around that area. The frequency of population turnover also is another thing we'll look at. And by incubation period of the disease, if animal population is very high at that point, and the incubation period of the disease is very short, then a frequency of surveillance will be much more than where there's no such risk. In a relatively static livestock population, where the population is not so dense, there may be no need for frequent surveillance. Maybe fortnightly is okay, but where there is high risk, high frequency of surveillance is needed. And one other factor that determines the frequency of surveillance is financial constraints. And that is because it requires to balance between realities and budgetary limitations. Next slide. Next slide. No, non-critical areas. We've mentioned critical areas to be identified where risk is high. Now, there will be areas, other areas where the risk is not high are known as non-critical areas. All other parts of the country where risk is not recorded will be considered as non-critical areas. Surveillance can be done maybe only once or twice in a year. That is annual surveillance. Then useful information can also be obtained from other existing network, individuals and groups who may not be veterinarians, but work in the field like NGO workers, crop extension workers, hunters, and so on and so forth. We can leverage on their availability and their movement to get information from them. Farmer awareness is one important thing that needs to be done, whether in the critical or non-critical area. Training of local farmers, the animal owners in disease recognition, encouraging them to report presence of any suspicious illness is very, very important. It's capital intensive, but it goes a long way to give us the understanding of the situation of diseases and allowing the veterinarians to move into the field, get information, and then report to the appropriate, very critical. Stakeholders should think about it and get involved in training farmers to identify disease illnesses. Next slide. Now, another point in surveillance is information system. It's not enough to carry out surveillance, but when you carry out surveillance, you gather information. We say is gathering of data, analysis of data. The information gathered, something must be done with such information. It must be managed. It must be sorted out and managed and then control and quality checked. There are some information that may not be published on the public domain, and there is a need for checking and controlling. It must be analyzed to become more understandable. Either analyze it into a chart, into a histogram, where it must also be acted upon by response and by information dissemination. Is very, very important and eventually useful for decision making. It needs careful management and quality control. Next slide. Next slide. Now we can see a diagram where communication is done. Communication gets information, passes the message to the recipient. The recipient may be a zonal veterinary officer. It may be a veterinary officer in the community, and the feedback is gotten to the authorities and even back to the communicator. A breakdown in any of these elements of communication, whether from the communicator, from the message itself, the recipient, and the feedback process, if there's any breakdown, then the entire cycle of communication will sooner or later be halted, and there will be no success in the planned surveillance program. Next slide. Next slide. There must be provision for position of system manager to carry out the following functions. When data is gathered, there's need to monitor data flow into the system so that there will not be break in communication. But we earlier mentioned that whenever there's break in communication, then the information flow will be halted. Check data quality. Various parameters are needed for checking data quality. In fact, from inception before data collection, decision is made on what kind of data is to be collected, how it is to be collected, and what parameters are required, and before the data collection takes place. They also need to carry out data analysis to ensure that analyzed information reaches the decision maker as at when due. And ensuring feedback to the field is also an important thing. We talked about communication and feedback. Field staff need to receive reports indicating outcome of trends in data. Sometimes researchers are carried away, collect data, go and analyze the data and publish, and will not get back to the men in the field. Next time when you show your face, they may not comply. They may not help you. Give them opportunity to respond appropriately and also air their own. Next slide. Now, there is a need for performance indicator in surveillance. It won't be proper to go ahead, carry surveillance, spend resources, and get engaged various stakeholders. There must be room for performance indicators, measuring efficiency of the surveillance system. Various parameters can be used to measure the efficiency of surveillance. Some formulation, as I said earlier, how are we going to measure our achievement or success or lack of success of our surveillance? Examples are as follows. How many reports have been issued? Reports from the surveillance. Has the surveillance program increased number of reported diseases in various livestock types, districts, and per month? Number of individual livestock inspections, staff member per month, number of livestock inspections carried out, staff members involved, and how many per month? Has it increased? Has it decreased? We will know whether our surveillance activity is successful or not. Percentage of observed disease incidents for which laboratory samples were submitted. Is there a decrease in occurrence of disease in that particular community or animal population? Percentage of suspected cases actually confirmed due to training and surveillance activities. How many cases have been confirmed? Are there increase as a result? Because without surveillance, you will not know what is happening in the field. But when surveillance is done, you get to detect more of the disease. That means laboratories too will be carried along by equipment, training, and facilities. Time lag from sample submission to final laboratory diagnosis. What is the turnaround time? Has it been reduced as much as possible, or it takes longer than necessary? These are some of the indicators that show us that we have measured the performance of our surveillance activities. Next slide. Now, when we come to virtual and clinical surveillance, we are talking about outbreak investigation. There are things that are required when you are reporting diseases. You need to mention the locality, the date of occurrence of the first of the index case and subsequent cases, the georeferences, the coordinate. Is very important to record it. You can use your handset, you can use GPS devices. Species of animals involved, number of cases, number of deaths, number of animals at risk, not yet infected but at risk, number of animals examined, history, clinical science, clinical examination, field test, tentative diagnosis, age category of affected animals, any treatment given, sent to the laboratory, result if available, and so on and so forth. For us that are working in the lab, I have gone through this list of 21 items. It's only one or two probably that does not matter to us, but all of them matter very importantly. Next slide. Now, serosurveillance, I decided to include disease investigation and serosurveillance as examples. These are information that you need to gather and send to appropriate authority when you are carrying out serosurveillance. By the way, serosurveillance is carried out for two reasons. Either you want to detect the presence of antibody against infection, or you want to test whether or not vaccination that has been carried out has resulted to seroconversion or immune response. These are the reasons for serosurveillance. You mentioned the locality and the date, species of animals involved, farm system. Is it intensive? Is it extensive? Is it semi-intensive or extensive? Disease history of the herd or flock. Vaccination history, very important. When was the last vaccination and what type of vaccine were administered? The age, category, and so on and so forth. And then the serial numbers of your, when you collect sample, as you can see in the picture, you have to label them properly with the date, the serial number, the sample ID, and the location. Disease being monitored, specify which disease are you suspecting or be monitoring. Test use, sensitivity, specificity need to be calculated. Number positive, number negative, and number suspected are very vital information that need to be collected and submitted for analysis. Next slide. Next slide. Lab. If your surveillance is at slaughter lab, what are the information you need to gather and share with the stakeholders? One, number of animals in the consignment. How many animals are being handled in that abattoir or slaughter slab? The origin of these animals. I'm doing a course recently and we discovered that some countries have means of tracing the animals from origin. I don't know how possible that with us it may be possible, may not be possible. origin is also very important so that they can be traced back. Lesion seen, condition diagnosed or suspected, sample sent to the lab result if available, and category of reporting officer. These are important information that need to be collected. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Now, managing the flow of data. You are collecting data. There's need to manage the flow of data. In general, flow of data in the case of visual surveillance, whether it is a disease reporting or investigation, we can go to the chart. Veterinary field worker in the field gets interviewed the farmer and then complete questionnaires and then checking and validation of data, and then the information gets to epidemiologists who analyzes the data and check information and generate a result out of the data, and then reporting is done to the regional reporting the centers, to the international centers such as OIE, and then reports are also submitted for response. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. A complicated data flow in complex system.
Okay. Doc, you stopped. I think he's almost done, despite he has short his time. But I was just hoping we could just give him 5 extra minutes to be through. Then Professor Fashional comes in. I already see some interesting debates on the group chat about what system do we use to collect data. Those are things that we'll debate after hearing from the Director of Veterinary Services. We'll be asking particular questions, and there will be a few back and forth question and answer here and there to see how we can move from where we are as a country with Yobe being our case study to where we ought to be. And we're just going to be building blocks, in one bricks upon the other, ensuring that if it works in Yobe, then it will most likely work in every other state. Dr. Teki, we lost you. Back end, is it off? I think we lost him a bit, so that because of our time that's already spent, I think I want to welcome the next speaker. Once he comes up, there's still opportunity at the end of the day for him to add his comment to the Hub experts recommendation at the end of the meeting. But if you will, back-end tech team, I want you to please help us spotlight Professor Fashional. When he comes back, we will take his concluding thought, but so that we don't waste a lot of this time, since it is precious, we'll just take livestock disease surveillance, but this one in particular will be putting us through the outbreak management in itself. Prof.
Okay. Yeah, thank you and good morning. I believe you can hear me very well. I will be speaking mainly on
spotlight
outbreak management as a component of overall disease surveillance and so. But let me declare my conflict of interest before we start, so that you know who I am. I also originated, or I started from NVRI. So it's like you have two NVRI colleagues speaking today. And Dr. Teki is actually one of my very close colleagues. Indeed, his wife and my wife are best of friends. And quite a number of the people on this forum, I also know them. I should also quickly say that Yobe State is of particular interest to me personally, because in the course of worked with Guru, Jakusko, Potisco, Damaturu, Gujba, and other places. So the viral indigene of Yobe State. So having put that into context, I also want to say that Yobe State is very strategic when it comes to disease surveillance and outbreak management. And this particular session is really very important for a state like Yobe State. You know, you border Niger. For example, they had outbreak of avian influenza then in Niger, in Zinda area, and you have it in Yobe in a number of places. You have Nguru, Adejia, wetland. You have also a lot of livestock resources, which are assets, but they can also become a challenge if they are not well managed. So opportunity to convert kinetic or potential energy to kinetic is what you should be looking for. And the PAMSEC had said so much that you are thinking of how to mobilize and utilize your resources effectively. So we can go to the next slide, not to waste time. So basically, when you talk of disease situation, it's the whole narrative is a whole chain, and you have a peacetime, you have the crisis time, and you have a recovery time. The yellow cycle there indicate the peacetime. Then the red cycle indicates the emergency or crisis time, and the green indicates the peacetime or the reconstruction and recovery time. And this is what we will be discussing. We are focusing mainly on the red area in terms of this discussion. But there is, you can do the red area without talking about the peacetime and without linking it to reconstruction. It's like you talk of a child going to secondary school and you never want to mention his primary school, or you don't want to mention the university that he attended. So it's a whole chain. So basically in peacetime is when you start your preparation, and alert time is when you are indicating or when you have a high tendency to have a disease, and reconstruction is what you do after the emergency situation. The next slide. So basically, in the pre-outbreak period, which I call the peacetime, that is when you are supposed to be doing your preparedness. You are supposed to be doing your rapid response team composition and preparation. You see, you don't go to war without preparation. You don't jump into situation of emergency without preparing. You are supposed to develop some control plans, some contingency plans, and you are supposed to review this periodically and be sure that you have everything in place. It is also the same time when you should be doing your roster. You know, you have expertise in different areas. For example, we expect the Yobe State Veterinary Service to have a roster of all the vets in the state, both private and public, and to know their area of expertise, so that in case you have a challenge and you want to use the public vet, you are using them, and public animal health assistant, the attendants, the lab, and all those things. And in case you need a surge capacity, you want to mobilize more, where can you get them from? Do you have that roster ready that you can use? Private sector, other individual companies, and also during the outbreak period, is part of the outbreak period is just the outbreak management will be focusing on today. But it the recognition of break the notification to the relevant health authorities. You are talking about cases, collating information. Some of them have been emphasized by Dr. You spread. You talk of identifying and controlling the source of outbreak, which is very important. And we will talk the post-outbreak period, right? Document that is ready to be used in case of outbreak. And these are some of the examples. I'm just showing this example to give you an indication of what you can do. Apart from the national control plan that you have in Nigeria, Yobe State should be able to have its own, contextualized from the national document. They don't have to be in conflict, but they can be complementary to what you have at the national level. The next slide. Okay, so as part of the pre-outbreak period also, in the disease mitigation and outbreak management, you need to prepare your team ready in case there are challenges. And one of the best way to prepare your team is to keep doing simulation exercise. And this simulation exercise can be as basic as tabletop exercise. For example, you have the officers sitting in their different offices, and then you trigger a situation. Okay, let's say we have an outbreak in Damatul today. What should happen? As simple as sitting around the table, discussing the issue, talking about it, talking about how you will act, talking about who will do what, is part of the simulation exercise. So discussion around the table can be part of it. Tabletop exercise can be part of it, wherein you say, okay, let's say the director of exercise, I got an indication that there is this outbreak. Now you are my officers in the field. What will you do? Let's start. Can you send me a mock email telling me of an outbreak in your area? Who will handle it? Who will you be involved in? What will you be doing? How will you handle it? Who are the people involved? How will you communicate with the stakeholder? It can be as simple as that. And it can also go into drill where you are coordinating a supervisor or you want to test a single function. For example, you may just want to test communication alone as part of the veterinary service delivery in a state. And you may want to test coordination alone. You may want to test outbreak response. You may want to test just the critical response time to respond to infection in the field. You may pick just a single function and want to test it, and that is called drill. You may also go into functional exercise where you have a number of functions that you want to test together, or you want to test the capacity of the field exercise. And field exercise can be limited or can be a full-scale exercise. Like the two pictures you see here, these are pictures that we took from a full-scale simulation exercise that was conducted between two countries. That's the country of Kenya and Tanzania. It was to test our capacity of scoping, the planning, the exercise management, the venue, all the material you see there until you get to the mission report that you finalize and look for the weak areas, do a review of the report. They call it after action review, do hot wash, and then prepare in terms of improving future response capacity. So you may have to do everything you have here, which can be divided basically into the pre-exercise planning period, the pre-exercise material development, the exercise conduct itself, and then post-exercise activity, wherein you are reviewing all the activities that you've conducted. The next slide. So basically, when you look at the different type of simulation I've talked about now, in terms of level of preparation and the resources you needed, it varies. For example, the tabletop simulation, which is called TTX here, or just ordinary discussion around the table, they are the cheapest in terms of what you can do. The drill are a bit more expensive. The functional exercise may be more expensive, and the full-scale field exercise may be a lot more expensive. For example, those pictures you saw in the previous 2 slides, it cost us over $1 million to implement that, because we are talking of involving 2 countries. We involved about 4 airports. We involved about 20-something clinic, both human clinic, veterinary clinic. We bought a lot of resources. You brought people from Geneva, people from Germany, people from different countries who are involved in the exercise. And we make it look as if we are doing a real field thing, as if the situation is happening. Indeed, a number of people got confused because they thought that there was a real situation at hand at that time. So it can really be very expensive when you are conducting a full-scale exercise. So you don't need to start at that level. You can start with the tabletop simulation. You can start with the drill. You can start with ordinary discussion around the table. You can go to the next slide. Yeah. So as I said, you can start with as little as seminar. For example, sitting in this particular meeting, as we are having this discussion, this is a seminar, and this is part of preparedness. This is a form of simulation. It may be little. You may think that you are really not doing much, that you are just sitting and listening to discussion online, but it's part of your preparation. By the time you finish this session, you will find out you'll be better prepared than having not done anything. It can also be workshop. The state may organize, okay, every year we want to organize at least 3 or 4 workshops, and we want to maybe do it zone by zone. You may decide to use senatorial zone. On this senatorial zone, we organize for Anthrax. On this zone, we organize for avian influenza. On this zone, we organize for rabies. And you rotate this and build capacity of your staff. Can be tabletop, as we say, can even be gaming. You may use it in form of games and say, okay, can we do gaming and see, should it happen really? We will be prepared. So we can do any of this scenario that you've seen outlined here. You can go to the next slide, please. So in terms of what are the objectives of preparedness and simulation? 1, you may need to test or evaluate multi-sectoral preparedness and response. So you may think you are fully prepared, but when you are hit with a situation in hand, you will find out that the first thing you lose during crisis period is coordination. Then you find out you also lose communication. You are not able to coordinate communication. For example, if we pick the situation of avian influenza, which involved even Yobe State 2006 to 2008, one of the first things we lost at the beginning of the outbreak was coordination and communication as a country. And this affected so many other countries similarly. And then you can also begin to lose other things. You can lose market, you can lose trade, you can lose even the trust of your stakeholder if you don't do those testing. It can be an opportunity to train and to create awareness. For example, you may do it, train your staff, the in-house staff, the expanded staff, the surge capacity, maybe the private sector, you may want to train them, and you may want to create awareness with your stakeholder. You may also want to evaluate existence of a multi-sectoral coordination mechanism. For example, you may want to check, are the public service and the private service, are we working together? Should we want to have a need for the private vet or the lab? Can we mobilize them immediately? Should we want to relate with maybe Nvma and the other lab, the university lab, and all those things? Can we relate very quickly and get everything in place? You may want to strengthen coordination within an organization. For example, the vet sector in Yobe State and the public health sector. Can you relate very freely and share information quickly and come to handle the situation immediately? Validation of instrument. For example, you've prepared a document and you want to test this document. Is it working? Is it meeting our need? For example, like we're having this meeting now, if it's possible, some public health person ought to be here to also see what you are doing, because zoonosis does not define boundary between the public health and animal health. You may also want to evaluate how participants will behave during an emergency. For example, we've had cases of influenza in swine, and people went online and said, oh, it is swine flu. And everybody leave off eating pig because they don't want to get swine flu. So it's possible to test that. The next slide. So quickly, why do we conduct simulation? For example, to test vital step of a preparedness, we said, to check the cost effectiveness of preparation and response, and as well as to exercise One Health, both public health and animal health, to coordinate them together. The next slide. So the role of CIMEX means simulation exercise are the one listed there. It reveals planning weakness. It will help you quickly identify your weakness. It can also help you to identify your resource gap immediately and to improve your coordination. Also to help clarify role. For example, if we want to communicate in case of disease outbreak, who communicates disease outbreak situation in Yobe State, for instance? Is it the chief vet officer, or is it the regional vet officer? Is it the district or local government vet officer? Who actually is in charge? If you've never tested, you may never know. For example, you as a local government veterinary officer, you may not have the right to communicate disease outbreak situation directly to the national government if your DVS had not permitted it. So, but if you don't do this type of testing, you may not know. And also in terms of developing enthusiasm, for example, when you build capacity, you find out you develop enthusiasm of your team. For example, every potential vet animal health attendant or your workforce in the animal health field in Yobe are potential DVS. They should be able to speak the mind of the DVS. And so in terms of developing their knowledge, their skill, their willingness and enthusiasm, you need to do this type of exercise from time to time. In the next slide. And also to familiarize staff with new function in case you have that, to test equipment, to gain public recognition, and also to test and evaluate contingency plan. For example, after this meeting, Yobe State may call another state nearby and say, oh, we want to build your capacity. We've got this training, we've got this capacity. Can we train some of your staff? It's possible. The next slide. So I mentioned the usual roster of experts. Also, it's important to have this roster of experts. For example, this can be an Excel-based something where you document, oh, all the public vets in Yobe State, these are the list. All the public health experts also, these are the list. All the private sector veterinarian, these are the list. All the laboratories in Yobe State, these are the list. You have that so that when you have need, it is not when you have need that you go into looking for this list. At that crisis period, you may not be able to get this done effectively. The next slide. So we go straight into the outbreak period, which is the key focus of our discussion today. Can you go to the next slide? Yes. So in terms of the outbreak period, which is the emergency period we are talking of here, the key things you need to do is to focus on prevention. You want to prevent the disease from spreading further. You want to focus on detecting as early as possible. You want to respond, which is very important, to respond timely and to respond effectively. And you want to begin to prepare for recovery, which is after the emergency period. So all this has to be linked together. There is no break between this because it's a whole chain, as I said. So one link into the other, one link into the other, and that should be your focus. So the next slide. Okay, so as I said, we will be focusing mainly on the emergency period, which is also called the outbreak period. And so emergency management or outbreak management is basically the same thing. The next slide. Okay, so what are the objective of an emergency period in terms of management or the outbreak management? One is to locate, to isolate, and to annihilate. If you forget everything in this session, do not forget the LCA, locate, contain, and annihilate. You want to locate infection as soon as possible. For example, the time to response in terms of disease outbreak determine to a large extent the success of that disease outbreak. Imagine there is an outbreak of anthrax in Yobe today, and it happened, let's say, in 4 local governments. In the first local government, the vet officer was able to detect it the same day it starts and was able to report it. And in another local government, the vet officer was not able to detect until about 4 weeks into the outbreak and report it. It may be the same Bacillus anthracis that infect the 2 communities, but the impact, the response, and the situation management will be different because you did not locate immediately in one instance. And also, not only locating, but containing it, isolating it, and stop it from spreading. It's important as much as the location is important. And then to be able to eliminate the infection as quickly as possible. So in terms of eliminating the infection as quickly as possible, you may need to pull together resources. For example, if you are dealing with the situation of anthrax, as soon as you are locating and isolating, are you informing the public health veterinarian? Are you involving the public health department? Are you involving the national department? Are you involving the zonal office of the lab, vet lab that is there with you, Nvma lab? Are you involving even the people in the land and land resources? Are you involving them? Are you talking to the stakeholder? It's important. And so the 3 key activity that is done during emergency is rapid analysis of the situation. For example, during crisis, you will hear some rumor will fly. For example, when we had Ebola, people say, oh, once you drink salt, you'll be okay. And people begin to drink salt. We have individuals who died of salt poisoning. So as officers, you should be able to gather such information, gather the rumor, and quickly filter the rumor, analyze the situation, and filter out the rumors or the untrue story from the true situation. And as soon as you find out this is true situation, you need to launch and implement emergency response plan, which you must have had before in terms of development of the content. And then the activation of the emergency response plan, you must also have it in place. The next slide. It's also important under rapid analysis to be able to know whether there's actually an emergency. Is it a threat to animal health in terms of trade, in terms of zoonosis? What is the existing response capacity? Do we have enough hand, or do we need to mobilize from other states to help us? What decisions should be made? What information is needed? For example, we will pick the situation of COVID. When COVID started in China, imagine the whole world had assisted China and come in and surge in and kill COVID in China. You can imagine the level of penury we would have saved ourselves in the world if we have killed COVID in China before it began to spread outside the region and begin to spread all over the world. So situation analysis also is important. Evaluate the existing response capacity, confirm, identify, prepare, and disseminate action plan to all the necessary officers that will be involved, and execute, evaluate, and revise the plan as necessary. The next slide. It's also important to be able to implement the response plans, as we mentioned. 1, the response plan is not what you prepare when you're having crisis in your hand. You must have prepared it before then. And then you need to have a declaration of state of emergency by the chief veterinary officer for the state to activate the plan. Because if the CVO does not tell you there is an outbreak situation and declare it, you cannot just go to somebody's farm and say, oh, you cannot move your animal. It will tell you, why shouldn't I move my animal? And then the activation plan should also be in place. The next slide. Okay, so in terms of declaration of the state of emergency, these are the list of things that can help the CVO to declare a state of emergency, maybe in the state. For example, if you see a priority disease absent in the country, or it's confirmed in the border neighboring you, for example, if you begin to hear of outbreak of avian influenza and it's spreading fast in Nigeria Republic at Zinda border, the CVO in Yobe, we put everybody on red alert and say, be ready. We have this situation in Zinda. It may come to us. Or if you have a suspicion of a first case of a disease that is previously absent. For example, it was mentioned some few minutes ago that for over 20 years, we've not had outbreak of anthrax, and now it's coming back. So it put you in red alert, or you are confirming a first case of a previously reported disease again, or there's a significant increase. For example, let's say you've been having brucellosis, but suddenly you begin to have so many cases of brucellosis everywhere in the state. Definitely, it will trigger an alert. Or you are having a high frequency of concomitant behavioral decline. For example, let's say suddenly all the dogs are just going mute. They are not responding, and it will definitely trigger a case to think of doing something. The next slide. So in terms of activation of the emergency plan, these are the things that need to be done. But coordination is important in this case. I can remember going back to the case of avian influenza that we have in Nigeria at that time then. I'm sure the senior vets here, we also remember that initially the government said, oh, there will be no compensation. Then when they say that they are not succeeding, then the government says, okay, we will pay compensation. And the compensation was higher than the market value of old layers. And then some people who have old layers in their farm begin to seed the infection into their farm so that their chicken can be depopulated and they can get enough money to start a new stock. And then the government know that, oh, we seem to be overpaying the people. And then the government changed the structure again and say, oh, we have to reduce the compensation because we are overcompensating. So you need to have this coordination structure in place, both locally as well as regionally at the state level, and you have to be coordinating also with the national because the thing may spread outside the state. So these are the different things that we need to think of: the resource, the procurement, the subnational triggering, the situation awareness, the modeling. And for example, currently I have a student who is doing some economic analysis, both cost effectiveness analysis and cost benefit analysis of a disease situation in Nigeria now. And the outcome is to inform and advise the government with regards to planning against such situation when it occurs. The next slide. Okay, so as I mentioned, you need to have a command in place and you have to have coordination in place. For example, in terms of command, if it is said that the information will only go out from the desk of the information officer under the permanent secretary, then no other person can disseminate information with regards to that disease unless the PAMSEC sanction that. If the command is that, okay, before any disease report goes out, it must be verified and validated by the DVS office. You have to wait until the DVS validates it before you send it out. Otherwise, you may be sending out a wrong information, and you can imagine how embarrassing it can be. Let's say you declare somebody's farm to be infected, and you find out you went there and wipe out all the animal. And maybe that person do an independent evaluation and found out his farm was not infected, and then begin to sue the state to court. How will you as a junior officer be able to defend that action? So you need to follow the line of command with regards to this disease management or outbreak management when it occurs. And these are some of the caveats or protection even for you as a junior officer when you are working under a senior management. So this command system and the coordination system need to be in place. You can have it at the local government level, you can have it at the state level, but it has to be linked together so that you know you have this chain of command all along the system. The next slide. It's also important to have this demobilization of emergency response plan. For example, let's say you put a movement ban in place as the CVO or as the PAMSEC of the ministry. You need to know when to lift that ban, because when you put this ban in place, you know it discomforts the people. They cannot move the animal, they cannot sell the animal. And let's say the disease situation is now going over, you are moving into the recovery period, and you are still not responding, you are not lifting the ban. You will get to a point when you begin to see the stakeholder revolting against you and revolting against your authority. And once you begin to have that in your hand, you are losing your authority as authority who is to take action. So you need to learn when to demobilize, when to take the necessary action, and when to release the procedure for such thing. The next slide. Okay, so it's also good to also review and strengthen the ongoing surveillance activity. Dr. Teke had talked extensively about the surveillance activity, but you need to periodically review what you do. For example, if you manage an outbreak and you finish the outbreak situation, you need to call your officers together. Let's sit around the table. This situation that we manage in Damaturu, let's look at it. What did we do wrong? What did we do right? How can we improve those areas that are wrong? How do we manage rumor register? How do we manage it? How do we support immediate reporting and notification? What are the incentive and disincentive to reporting? Are we having surveillance plan in place? Even if it's a page of surveillance plan that you have and you distribute to all the local government and they are using it. For example, how do you mobilize resources? For example, when you collect outbreak data, what do you do with it? Some of the questions we've seen on the forum is talking about it's not collecting data that is the challenge, but how do we use the data? You know, most African countries are resource rich in terms of data, but what do we do with those data? Then you carry those data, you give it to the West to be used to also, they now design it into data and then begin to sell it back to you. For example, if you go to Google Analytics, you go to most of these AP Analytics, you go to most of these software, most of the data used in those platforms are collected from the developing countries. But what do we do with those data ourselves? We hardly do anything useful with it. You get to an office, you see somebody sitting on pile and pile and pile of information, and he's not using it for anything. He's not using it for postgraduate training, not using it to improve the system. But you are just collecting the data and piling it up. You need to begin to change and begin to utilize those data through reviewing, through strengthening the surveillance system that you have in place. The next slide. Okay, so at the time you finish this, your immediate outbreak, what are the follow-up actions that you need to do? One, we need to review. When you look at the whole situation that you've handled, you need to decide, are we going to pay compensation or are we only supporting restocking with disease-free animal? If that is what you want to do we have the capacity to do it? For example, you cannot say we will start compensation and maybe halfway into the compensation, you find out you don't have enough money. Then you say, oh, we are stopping compensation. Definitely, people, the stakeholder will take it as political. Oh, the PAMSEC only approved compensation for Damaturu before because it's from Damaturu. Now he had paid them. He stopped it because it is our turn. So you need to review and evaluate what you want to do before you even start. You want to conduct damage assessment. Okay, what impact has this disease that had happened? What impact does it have on us? Should we have an outbreak of anthrax today and it wipe out, let's say, 1/3 of all the animals in Yobe state? Will we be able to survive it? What will we be losing in terms of animal resources? How do we transfer emergency response personnel? For example, this surge capacity. Okay, in Gujva, they need extra hand. And we have extra people sitting in Damaturu. What is the opportunity to mobilize this resource and send them to go and assist them in Gujva or in Nguru if they need those resources? Mobilization of resources. For example, some of this information we are collecting, if you convert the information nicely into tool you can use to mobilize resources, you can actually do that. When you do well, you know, one of the challenge we have as technical officers is that when we are doing well, we don't sing our song. And somebody like Sir Amadou Bello he said that when everybody is singing, is blowing their tune, that you should also blow your trumpet. Because if you don't blow your trumpet, you see everybody will keep blowing their trumpet. It's only your own trumpet that will be left unblown. And at the end of the day, the trumpet you did not blow will now be a limitation to you. So if you are doing well and you are not marketing yourself, when they want to sell you off because you are not doing well, they will still market you to sell you off. So if you manage an outbreak well, why don't you prepare a nice PowerPoint and call, oh, PAMSEC, we will need to speak to you. We need to show you what we've done in this case. And after you tell him, you show him those nice PowerPoints, you show him video audio and some of the photo that you've taken in the field. You say, sir, we will have done more if we have, maybe let's say we have the material to be able to conduct outbreak investigation at the local government level. Then you find out you are already condescending to him. And then the next thing you'll tell your head of department, please, can you send the PS a letter demanding for this? Knowing that he had already committed to you some few days back, you'll find out it will be difficult for him to reject your request. So you need to learn how to do those mobilization. Then how do we evaluate? You need to do that. You evaluate your response plan and how you improve. And if it's possible, publish from what you've done and implement systematic lifting of restriction, as I've said. The next slide. Okay, so there are a few things I just want to tell us as a takeaway as we are rounding off this discussion. One, there is a Latin word that says si vis pacem para bellum, that if you want peace, you prepare for war. For example, if you don't prepare for outbreak and you are resting, you are just waiting and say, oh, we are not having challenges. When the outbreak comes, you will lose it. So like we are having this forum now, it's a matter of preparing for outbreak against anthrax or avian influenza or any disease is important. You need to recognize and confirm outbreak as rapidly as possible. You need to also set your notification to Public and Animal Health Authority. You need to prioritize it when it happens. You need to define cases and collect information and know how this can be done before disease happens to you. You need to also be able to think of how to implement infection control measure very rapidly. For example, we did some risk factor analysis during the avian influenza situation of 2006 to 2008. Do you know we found out that one of the spreader of avian influenza in most countries in Africa are the veterinarian? How you will ask me? Veterinarians, they have all the book knowledge on how to manage and control disease. But because they are in a crisis period, they jump to this farm, move to the next farm, move to the next farm, move to the next farm in terms of controlling infection. They began to spread the infection through that. Meanwhile, what they should have done is, okay, we have a team. Can we divide ourselves into two teams? Let a team begin to work centripetally, working from outside inward, from disease-free farm into disease infected zone, and let another group be working in an infected area and not go outside the infected area. And maybe after you work for about 3 or 5 days from in an infected area, you go home and go and rest for 3 days. If you've done all this plan, you will find out it will be easy to manage the situation. So identifying and controlling disease at source is important. Effective communication, education, and reporting is important. And do not panic. You need to be in control during disease situation. I think the next 1 or 2 slides, we should be winding down. Next. Okay, so the few other things to consider is rapidly convene an outbreak team. It's important to have your outbreak team, and this is why it is important to have that register. If you have the register in place, you'll be able to find out how to pull people from different expertise and put them together and put them in a team. So this team you should use the following criteria. People who have knowledge of disease epidemiology, people who have knowledge of the infectious agent, people who know the likely source of the outbreak, people who have potential impact on service delivery. You look at the scenario. This disease, does it have, for example, anthrax now? What can it cause to us? Does it have potential public health risk? Does it have public health concern and media interest? And you should be able to give your OMT, which is the outbreak management team, their term of reference. Group them into operations, communication, logistics, coordination. And the next slide. So I just attached a few of the material. These are free source material. You can get them online. I'm sure this PowerPoint will be made available to you in case you want to source this information. You can download them online and you can do extra reading of this material. So the next slide, and I think that should be the last. Yes, these are some extra material. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Over from me.
Whoa, whoa. Thank you so very much, Prof. You know, while you were talking, I was just thinking to myself that, you know, Yobe, you're very fortunate. You know, I was now wishing we had opened this up to every of the veterinarians across the country. But they took the initiative, and that's really very brilliant. Yobe State took the initiative. They were the one who reached out to use our platform to learn. And personally, as a vet with a little 15 years experience, this has been one of the most brilliant and simplified, well-put outbreak disease management. I learned a lot around the simulation also. And, you know, I was just wondering, do we do enough simulation? But again, thank you so much, Professor Fashina, and also thank you, Dr. Teki. Now we are now going to the actual case study around this whole discussion. There's textbook knowledge, there's experience sharing knowledge, and then there's practical workshop where we'll have to listen to what Yobe is doing in actual. After which, we are now going to use all the lessons we've learned in this workshop to now figure out what are the loopholes. Are they doing well? Can we score them? At the end of the day, we're going to score Yobe State. How is the level of preparedness regarding disease outbreak? How are they managing it? And then what do they need to do? And after this, we'll be able to come up with a one-page document on the fact that knowledge has been passed, experience has been shared, activities have been improved, and we look forward to a better response to disease management in Yobe State. So without wasting a lot more on this, we will call on the DVS of Yobe State. I think he is here as Issa Sani, Dr. Issa Sani. Am I correct?
No, not he's not Dr. Issa Sani. Dr. Femi.
Yes, sir.
I just spoke with the
Dr. Ilyasu. Pardon me, Dr. Ilyasu.
Yes, I just spoke with him, and he's currently attending a function in Abuja. He has been in Abuja for almost 2 days now.
Okay, yes, I know the function.
Yeah, but he has instructed one of his staff in the headquarters to deliver the presentation on his behalf. I think he has asked Dr. Mahmoud Sisbari, Dr. Mahmoud Mustafa. I don't know whether he's online.
What name is he online with, so that we can activate his access to talk and also share what he has like to share?
Mahmoud Mustafa.
Okay, all right. So okay, so he has it. So Dr. Mahmoud, you can please unmute yourself. You've made a co-host. So you have another 10 minutes to just share what it is in Yobe State, what's happening in Yobe State, and how are you preparing. Then we will now use the knowledge that we've just gained to analyze your preparation and get it through. Thank you.
I can see Mahmoud Alhaji Mustafa.
Yes, he's been made co-host, so he could share.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead, Dr. Mahmoud.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. Good morning, all. I was just informed by my DBS to say a word or two because he's attending a function in Abuja. Hello?
Go ahead, sir.
Yes, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Go ahead.
Okay. The Directorate of Veterinary Services in Yobe State is one of the department that is being blessed with highest number of public veterinarians in Nigeria. Yobe State is having about 150 public veterinarians working across the state. So we have 5 zonal veterinary offices. We have one in Damaturu, Potestum, Gashua, Nguru, and Gaidam. And we have 17 area veterinary offices. All these places are being manned by veterinary doctors, and we have abattoirs. We have our modern abattoir in Damaturu and Potestum, Gashua, Gaidam, and other LGAs. So apart from that, as far as preparedness is concerned, Yobe State is one of the states that is currently working tightly with other relevant stakeholders. Yobe State have inaugurated the one health team, and the team is being chaired by the DBS, and they are conducting meetings at the EOC to inform or to educate themselves on what is going on as far as zoonotic and other diseases that are bothering the state. So far, Yobe State government have procured Anthrax support vaccine, and the vaccination is ongoing across the states. As we all know, Yobe State, we are sharing border with Niger Republic. We have about 8 LGs across our northern side that are sharing border with Niger, and there is high number of movement of animals within the border. So our team have been mobilized. The vaccination is ongoing. Additionally, there was capacity building of our avios in collaboration with NADIS and FMAT. The capacity of our vets, area veterinary officers, our paravets were built, and more especially on disease surveillance and reporting. Also, we are collaborating with other relevant stakeholders to build the capacity of our front lines, our workers. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
So a capacity building was also done with our area veterinary supervisors across the states, where veterinary supervisors from each LGA were drawn in collaboration with our surveillance officers. Their capacity also was built on how to improve on surveillance and disease reporting. So Yobe State, we are at alert. The vaccination is ongoing, and we are getting reports day in, day out. We have our M&E who is also always monitoring how the reports are being sent. So this is the little I can say as far as the Department of Veterinary Services is concerned. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Mahmoud. You know, even the idea of having to do this is a very good sign of how Yobe is thinking. So we want to congratulate Yobe for these massive steps, and then for putting preparedness, you know, just like Professor Fashino said, you know, there's peacetime. In peacetime, what you need to do actively is to prepare. And of course, you have exhibited a lot of that attributes, and we're very glad to be part of the Yobe State success story. Now, we will now have question and answer. I see questions bubbling here and there. I see comments here and there. We're going to take the next 15 minutes to handle all these questions. But while I was going through the participant, I saw DSU LAG. Can you please unmute them? I see that you're sitting down in a conference room and listening to this presentation. And at one point in time, your hand were raised up. You want to quickly say something. So who are you first? So I need to be sure, but I love the organization. you're sitting down, well organized. I want to be sure who you are. DSU LAG. Hope it's not Lagos.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, everyone on the team. The DSU is actually a delivery support unit under the Agency for Coordination of Sustainable Development and Humanitarian Response of the Borno State Government. So the
Borno State Government?
Yes, of Borno State Government.
All right.
So it was initially established with a view to supporting the MDS, that is the Ministry, Department, and agencies, to align their activities to the 25-year development plan of His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Borno State, Professor Babagana Umara Zulum. So one of the pillars the FCDO is supporting is the leadership in agriculture. So there are 9 pillars under the 25-year development plan, of which 4 are being currently funded or supported by the FCDO. That is the human capital development, the leadership in agriculture, sustainable environment, and healthy citizenry. So I'm here standing in on behalf of the head of the delivery support unit, Hadiza Omara, who is unavoidably absent and attending to another official engagement of equal importance. So we are very much grateful, and I would like to just appreciate particularly the Executive Secretary of SEMA for extending the invitation to Borno State team to attend. So with me on the team is the Director of Livestock Services of the Ministry of Agriculture, Borno State, and we have the Director Planning, Research and Statistics of the same ministry, and other members of staff across MDS that are related to agricultural activities and livestock in particular. So thank you very much, sir. We are most grateful joining you.
Fantastic. So we are really pleased, and thank you for joining us as a team, and great work you're doing. So let's go into the participatory section. Backend team, I want you to spotlight the permanent secretary for Yobe State. I want you to spotlight Dr. Teki, and then I also want you to spotlight Professor Fashina, and let's have this conversation. So I will be reading out a few questions. I think this is about the best time to start reeling out your questions. I've seen a couple. Somebody said, good day all. I think in disease surveillance in vet practice, where laboratory facilities are almost non-existent in many places, most diagnosis is based on clinical science, which is subjective. How do we close this gap? All right, so the first person I want to ask is the permanent secretary. I don't know, what's the state of diagnosis in Yobe State? So back end, if you could just ensure that the permanent secretary, Dr. Musa, is spotlighted, Professor Fashina is spotlighted, all at the same time, and Dr. Teki is also spotlighted. That would be a very good thing. All right, good. PSR. Okay, you can unmute yourself, PS.
I think the farms
fantastic.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, exactly, we can.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to make some clarifications because during the presentation, you made mention that that I said that we have 7 million heads of cattle. What I meant was we have 7 million animals in Yobe State. That is cattle, sheep, goat, donkeys, horses, camels combined. That's what I meant. But in cattle, we have about 2 million heads of cattle. That's the clarification I want to make first. And then the second one is my friend, Dr. Teki, who also said that we had an outbreak of anthrax. But we didn't have any outbreak of anthrax. All the vaccinations that we are doing right now is just a preventive measure, because as the DVS has mentioned, we have a very large porous border with Yobe State, with Niger Republic, and we had that the infection is we had the outbreak. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. So
okay, that we had that there was an outbreak of the disease in Ghana and Burkina Faso. And we know that Burkina Faso is bordering Niger. And we know from Niger, it's very easy for animals to get across Nigeria because we have a very porous border and there is a large movement of animals from that place. And that's why we just embarked on the vaccination as a preventive measure. And we also had the infection in Niger State, and all this prompted the State Ministry of Agriculture, and we informed our governor, who gave us all the support that we needed, to just go ahead with the vaccination. So, in actual fact, all we are doing is preventive measures. And then going by the question that you mentioned, that how do we go about surveillance without a very efficient laboratory system? So we have this collaboration with Nvma, and whenever we have an outbreak, we quickly send samples there. Of course, we rely on clinical science, and then we make our tentative diagnosis, but then we send samples to Nvma for confirmation. And that is the referral laboratory that we use for all these kind of important diseases outbreak. That's what we do. But we also have small laboratories around, scattered all over the state, where we can make simple diagnosis. I think this is what I can say on this issue.
All right. Thank you, Permanent Secretary. Professor Fashino, so what do you think? How do we bridge? So Nvma has just been the lifesaver in the entire country, and we really cannot overemphasize their importance. In the aspect of having these done quickly, what will you advise? What will you advise we do? What do we advise Yobe State to do? The Permanent Secretary had said in aspect of outbreak, they quickly send samples to Nvma. And of course, they have smaller labs scattered here and there for simple tests. What will be your opinion regarding this?
Exactly. Thank you. Indeed, one of the best things that happens to the Nigerian Veterinary Service is the fact that we have Nvma that has satellite lab all over the country. If I remember, as of the last time, Nvma has about 26 or so satellite laboratory in almost all the state of the Federation. And the fact that you also have some labs within the state, one of the things that the state government can begin to think of is to create this network of lab. Let them have a sort of a referral system within the state. For example, a disease like anthrax is not difficult to diagnose at the community level or at the local government lab or so, or whether they want to do it by zonal lab. Let's say they want to divide the state into agricultural zone, let's say 4 or 5 zones, and have a lab that have capacity, has other lab that can feed into them, has all those lab feed into the Nvma zonal lab, and has that Nvma zonal lab feeding into the national lab that is based in form. If that can be done, Maiduguri or Borno can do it, every state can do it, you will find out that it will be like a light lighting another light, and it will make this diagnosis easy for everybody. And then you are also building capacity through that. We've had situation where you see a state like Yobe State, if you do that effectively, you can become a source of teaching other states how to do it right with regards to that. And that can be a source of strength for you. Like I know some country, when they are training other country, they even get paid to train other country. So if you do it effectively as a state, you can say, oh, Katsina or Kaduna say, can you come and learn from us? You pay us this facilitation fee. We come and train you on how to do this networking. That's one thing. Another thing is that provision of resources. For example, it's good that the PS is here. It should be helping them to mobilize to find resources so that the facility to do this type of testing can be available, because it's one thing to train manpower, it's another thing to capacitate them so that they can do the work. You can have a very effectively trained manpower. If they don't have as single as a slide, how can they do anthrax diagnosis? So some of those equipment are not really expensive. It's just a matter of priority. For example, a model we can use, like in South Africa, I know that for every animal that goes to the abattoir, 1% of the cost of that animal is separated and is used in terms of building capacity for surveillance, in terms of building capacity for research in that area. If the state government put a little levy on every animal that go to the abattoir and say, okay, this levy, sir, we want to use this money particularly to strengthen veterinary capacity at the local level, or for every animal that move that need to get certificate to cross the state boundary, you pay this levy, and those levies are put together and they use it. This year we are buying resources, we are buying consumables, and we are distributing it to all the local government to make sure that they do this effectively. It will help.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prof. I'm coming to Dr. Teki, just still in the line of that same conversation. But I saw the acting registrar of the Veterinary Council initially. I don't know whether he's still on. Thank you for joining, Dr. Aniza. Thank you for joining. Also, the Financial Secretary for the Nvma Nigerian Veterinary Medical Association, Dr. Lydia, thank you for joining. Now, somebody is saying MVRI labs across the states are moribund. And then MVRI also needs to support and improve their diagnosis turnaround time. That's a lot of accusation, Dr. Teki. What do you have to say about that? Yes, you can unmute yourself, please. Tech team, can you enable, okay, so I'm clicking something, so you, oh,
okay,
fantastic.
yes, it's okay. Actually, I have had that complaint sometimes in some conferences and workshops. Well, it may not be that the facilities are not there. If a sample is sent, especially, probably without a specific or maybe multiple tentative diagnosis, such samples are sent to various labs, to various labs in the institute. But when we talk about samples like anthrax case, like avian influenza, and other when there are outbreaks, there's no anybody can testify that there's no delay. But sometimes when it is routine surveillance samples, because there are various labs where samples are sent before the results are collated and submitted, it may take a little bit of time. Sometimes the reports are sent to the devices. I don't know whether they actually get it. It may not get to the field person, whoever sent the sample. What we do actually is, like where I am in rabies, for example, whoever sends the sample, whoever name appears on the sample, the results gets to the person, and then the device of that particular state is copied. But we have just started this QMS, quality management system in the institute. And now, as a result, results go out from only one source. But no specific lab sends out results until they are collected by a specific individual who heads that aspect and compiles the result on a standard form and issues it out. But I am sure work is being done to make sure that these things are done quite early so that reporting can be very, very effective.
All right, thank you, Dr. Teki. Because of our time, I'm just going to ask another round of questions, and then we'll try and bring this to a logical conclusion. Somebody is saying, and thank you, I need to acknowledge Dr. Buka, MNI, retired from NAFDAC. He is saying that Prof's presentation can effectively be implemented by Yobe State by way of coming up with emergency preparedness plan that will encompass all the stages. That will help in managing the rapid analysis of the situation. That will help in managing the rapid analysis of the situation. All right, so now the Permanent Secretary one more time. Coordination. Somebody said coordination. In most states and federal ministry in the state work in silos. domestication of national documents in the state can be effectively achieved if there's effective coordination. So he wants to know what's the level of coordination between you and FMAD, that's the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development.
Yes. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you for that question. You know, coordination is very important because the federal government will do the policies, and then at the subnational level, the state governments will implement some of these things because it is there that the primary focus is centered on. So we work in collaboration with the federal government, of course, and in many ways, you know, we do a lot of integration and then assimilation into the various projects that we have in the state. Even right now, what I was saying earlier, that we are trying to develop 3 grazing reserves to turn them into a livestock hub for the state. And these 3 grazing reserves, one across each senatorial zone, we are doing in collaboration with the federal government. In fact, the federal government even co-funded the project. It's a matching grant from the federal and the state government to develop these 3 grazing reserves. And right now, in one grazing reserve, we have already done almost 20 projects in one grazing reserve. That is from earth dams to boreholes to veterinary clinics to dispensary, primary school for the harder children, pasture development area, milk collection centers, feedlots, and then what again? Fish ponds. We have done even harder settlements, pilot harder settlements. We have connected the grazing reserve with the national.
All right, so I want to be sure that this is from.
We have even artificial insemination in just one grazing reserve, and we are going to replicate that to the next reserve that we are going to start very soon. And all this is in collaboration with the federal government. And then we also have some World Bank projects like the Outbreak that is coming up very soon. It's also in collaboration with the federal government, and so many others, and especially in areas of food security. You know, the federal government sometimes assists the state with certified seeds, inputs like fertilizers and other pesticides that are all needed to improve agriculture. And overall, I can say it's a very nice collaboration, and you know, we need to go moving forward to improve on this, so that we'll all be on the same page whenever there is this kind of development going on. Thank you very much.
Secretary, thank you very much. To Professor Fashina, I want to ask, somebody saying that usually funding is a major challenge in disease diagnosis. There's no support for sample transportation to Nvma for adequate diagnosis. First of all, I would love to ask if the Permanent Secretary, if funding is a challenge in Yobe. I think he can directly answer that. Then I will now want to go back to you, Prof, to know where there are funding gaps. What creative ways could we go about it? But let the Permanent Secretary quickly just drop a word on this. Is funding a challenge in Yobe State?
I can say yes and no at the same time, because funding, you know, is a challenge almost everywhere, because as you rightly know, that the federal government and the states are all short of funds. And so whenever we have money, you know, it's being channeled into some very important aspects of governance. And then sometimes, you know, no matter how small, you know, you get to it, depending on the way you push for funding in the state, you know, for your budget to be implemented, you know, you can get some funding, adequate funding, you know, to do some basic things as far as diagnosis, as far as veterinary care is concerned. And it all depends on the political will, as we always say. It is the political will. When the government is ready, they can fund all these projects. When they are, they have some other priorities, they tend to, sideline some of these. It all depends on the political will. That's what we say. But overall, Yobe State is enjoying a lot of funding from the state government right now, because I'm sure that we are one of the few states that are actively, pursuing veterinary care, pursuing livestock production in our country. And this is all because of the, political will of our governor, His Excellency Nvma, and the support we enjoy from him. And I remember last 2 years when we have this retreat on strategy for agricultural development in Abuja, he personally graced the occasion. He was the one that opened the workshop there. We did it in collaboration with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And we came up with a 5-year strategic plan for agricultural development. We also developed an agricultural policy, all because of his enthusiasm and then support to see that agriculture and livestock in particular, is boosted, and then turned into a very important economic venture in the state. Thank you.
All right, so Permanent Secretary, what a good way to, I think your explanation just nailed it. But yes and no is your answer. Thank you. So to Prof, Professor Fashion, so funding, it's always a challenge. And we need rapid response. Your presentation was brilliantly stated, and we got encouraged. But in my parlance, they said money is the will of the gospel. If there's no funding, how do we move these ideals forward?
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. I think the PAMSEC had made my job easier with his response, and I'll just top it up. You see, to me, I really don't believe that there is a funding challenge. The money is not always enough. The want and the need. If you remember our simple principle of economics, is always there. The needs are the thing you need. The wants are just so many. It's a list of things. So funding is how we should be looking for money that we should be thinking of, not really that there is a funding need. For example, I'm sure if we pick Yobe as a state, you have so many stakeholders in the animal industry. Have we ever reached out to them? For example, maybe the Cattle Farmer Association or so, have you think of partnering with them? Even the successes you've achieved in the veterinary animal health industry, have you ever showcased it either to the governor? You call the governor, or you say you ask for a special session with the parliament. So we want to showcase what we've been doing, the successes we've achieved over the year. We want to showcase it to you. Have you done that? Have you showcased your successes to development partner? Have you been able to relate with development partners? Say, oh, please, let's work together. Like the PAMSEC just said now, they work with Bill and Melinda Gates to develop a 5-year master plan. Then after developing that, you say, oh, can we test the first part of this development master plan? How much are you committing to this? For instance, if I can give you a scenario, we have cases of outbreak in Kenya last year. And when it started with a local government, and we went there and we assisted them a little, we have resources at the FAO Kenya office. After we assisted them, we said, put together this report and then put together a nice presentation. We showcase this to the FAO headquarters, and we showcase it to USAID, and we showcase it to DTRA, Defense Threat Reduction Agency. As we speak now, they have a $500,000 grant to do an extensive work, including to do risk mapping, including to do some other work. And this now not only borders Kenya, it now affected positively Ethiopia as well as Uganda in addition. So, thinking creatively around how to make money is the important thing. And I tell you, we have this strength. A number of the things we do, for example, we talk of livestock development. That can be a leeway. You can say, oh, you are talking of poverty eradication among the poor people. You talk to your politician. If you will eradicate poverty in your senatorial district as a senator, what are you doing? One of the ways you can do that is by assisting them in managing animal disease. Call the senators and talk to them and say, we are coming to see you because you need to address the need of your people. Distributing free money to them will not help them. But if you help them to improve this, it will help them. It will help boost livelihood. It will help do this, help do that. So we should not only see animal disease as animal disease alone. We should see it as livelihood. We should see it as something that bothers some people. We should see it in terms of votes. Oh, if you don't support these people, you will lose the next election because they will be busy in their farm, attending to crop instead of having their livestock nearby and attending to voting for you. So we need to begin to think creatively and develop our story, develop our success story and make it convincing to get the money we need. I think that's the most important thing. I can tell you, I can narrate so many scenarios, an example of how we make money from disease situation that occurred in different parts of Africa. So that would be my response. Thank you.
Fantastic, Prof. Fantastic way of answering that question. So life is generally storytelling. You could say a story, somebody could cry. You could say a story, somebody could laugh, depending on how well you tell that story. And you know, while you were making those points, I saw the permanent secretary also confirming that great stuff you're sharing. Now, I think finally, before I bring up the host, that's the chairman of Nvma, our time is fast spent, is to ask Nvma. Right. So we are all coming to you. Will you have any last word for the permanent secretary is here, the chairman Nvma Yobe State is here. So you practically have the ears of the Yobe State government here. Unfortunately for us, we are all veterinarians, right? From the table of the director of ED, the executive director of Nvma, what last word will you want to drop?
Well, I would like to say to my classmates, Dr. Abba Musa Kolore, the congratulations for the effort you are making. Actually, it was a slip of tongue. I meant to say Niger State, and I said Yobe State had outbreak of that particular Anthrax disease. I want to this training and retraining is very important. Training and retraining of officers is important. Prof mentioned something that is dear to my heart in his presentation. Many times, many states have neglected the services of private veterinarians. Private vet needs to be brought on board, get engaged, take records and know, have statistics of them, know where they are and who they are, like he said, and then be able to mobilize them. A little incentive is okay. In your routine disease reporting and in disease outbreak investigation, make use of them. Have constant meeting with them and also train them on how to send samples is very important. If that one has not been done, because sometimes we receive samples in bad shape. They come but not on cold chain, and there's nothing we can do. Get involved in your training includes sample collection, sample shipment. Diagnosis, good diagnosis begins with sample collection and sample shipment and before the laboratory analysis. Thank you very much. We are really grateful for the opportunity.
Dr. Teki, thank you so much. And Professor Fashino, thank you. I think I will allow the chairman, the back end, if you could spotlight the chairman, Yobe State, Dr. Bulama, to come up. First of all, thank our resource persons and also invite a few people to give some goodwill messages, then we'll wrap this up. But before we allow him come up, I want to let us know, everybody listening, that the Farm Alert platform is available to anyone free. We enjoy doing this collaboration with state governments, with local organizations. The more we promote the discussion, the conversation around animal health, the more our mission is fulfilled. And we are here to use our uniqueness, our platform, so this is being offered for free. So come around and let us collaborate and ensure that together with everyone in the industry, we move the animal health industry forward. So to the chairman, Yobe State, the host, and of course, the brain behind this initiative, Dr. Bulama, over to you to thank our resource person and also to invite a couple of people you might have in mind for goodwill messages.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Wow. Wow. This
Hello,
is very
Chairman, we can hear you.
Wow, this is quite beautiful. I actually don't imagine that this outing could be up to this magnitude. This is quite beautiful. This is actually the first in the history of Nvma Yobe State. And I want to believe that going forward, we shall continue to utilize this kind of resources. The moderator, like I said before, I cannot thank you enough. Looking at the short period of time when I contacted you, and to ensure that this event came successful, I want to thank you very sincerely for your commitment, for your dedication, for your love to ensure that animal health delivery is a successful one in the history of not only Yobe State, but in the entire country. I want to really appreciate the technology of the current sanctuary, because this has really given us the opportunity to get access to these resource persons of international repute. It has given us a rare privilege and the wisdom to get in contact, to have a kind of face-to-face interaction with this resource person with a very limited resources. I want to therefore profoundly express my appreciation to these resource persons for bringing on board your wealth of experience and vast knowledge. I want to assure you that what we have gained from you today, it should be useful throughout our public service career. And not only that, we'll ensure that at our own level, we'll cascade some of these experiences and knowledges that we got from you to other level, God willing. At a point, I came to discover that this event was beyond Yobe State, because I have seen participants outside Yobe State. I have seen my colleagues from the Southwest. I have seen my colleagues from the North Central. I have seen quite a number of my colleagues from the Northeast, even from the South. I have seen my boss. I have seen my mentor, the man who has actually exposed me on how to collect blood sample using the jugular vein. A former provost, a former permanent secretary, and a former commissioner in the Borno State Civil Service, and a Northeast Zonal Coordinator of NABDAC in the person of Dr. Bakar Ali Usman. Sir, I am so much grateful, and we are quite proud of having you as a mentor. So to all the participants, this event shows that knowledge sharing is beyond state. It should be a kind of networking to ensure that animal health service delivery is a collective responsibility. What affects Mr. A, what affects community A, actually affect community B. So it is a kind of collective responsibility, full resources to identify relevant stakeholders and to bring all the resources and the knowledge together so that it should be a benefit for the entire community. So Professor Florencio Pashina of the FAO and Dr. Teki Ishaya want to thank you very sincerely once more. And going forward, we'll continue to tap from you, from your vast experiences and the knowledge. And I also want to use this opportunity to inform Dr. Teki, who I believe in this event represent NBRI as an institute, that plans are well underway between the association, that is NBMA Yobe State chapter, and Yobe State Ministry of Agriculture and Natural Resources, to request for a another capacity building training. And this time around is going to be a physical capacity building training. We request the resource person basically from NBRI to come and deliver the capacity building workshop to our members, so that at least the pressure trainings is a things that should be done on regular basis. And we fully believe in that and will continue to work toward that. So on this note, I want to very humbly invite Dr. Bakar Ali Usman, as well as Dr. Ibrahim Jallo Mohammed, on behalf of the ES Yobe Emergency Management Agency, Dr. Mohammed Goje, to deliver their goodwill message. And on the final note, I also like to call on my able Deputy Director, my Deputy DBS in the person of Dr. Ibrahim Goni, to give us a closing remark on behalf of this very important occasion. Thank you, and it's over for me. Thank you so much, sir.
All right, so I think we take Dr. Bukar first.
Dr. Femi and other colleagues, I'm really humbled by the words of
If you can turn on your video, that would be nicer, so that we can see you. And then please, back end, can you help?
No, I'm a retired person, so I'm in my very casual at home. So permit me, please.
Permitted, sir.
Okay, maybe let me see. In my home office, I really am highly delighted and glad that this thing is coming up. And I was really excited seeing one of my former students actually doing very well. Dr. Musa Kolere and Co were at least all our schoolmates. Even though they were a year ahead of Teki and Musa, they were a year ahead of me in the vet school. So on those quick something, I just wanted, like I chatted in the forum, as a veterinarian, there is need for us to move a step further by developing some soft skills, especially on data analysis address. So most of what the speakers have said, that soft skill can help us a lot in interpreting our results. For example, we rely more on statisticians and data scientists on some of the whatever data they come up with. But you as a veterinarian, as soon as you see the pattern of the data, how the presentation, the disease or whatever presents itself, you can easily have an edge over the statistician that is not a professional. So it won't take much for us to just go extra mile to develop our soft skill. The QMS, the quality management system, it is something that, that's one thing that differentiates between the private organization and the public services. Private organizations religiously use QMS. That's why they were able to perform, track their performance, this and that, and every other thing. So there is need, because from the experience of NAFDAC, at least entrenching QMS to some extent will help in improving our performance. For example, like the issue of Teki to complain about sample coming from state not complying with the sampling guide. So you see, NVRI can come up with a standard operating procedure on how to collect sample, how to send sample. That document can be sent out so that the states can now adopt that, so that if anytime if there is need, at least the sample that they will send will actually fulfill the requirement of that, of the NVRI or any other lab. So I think I need not to take our time. I just say I really appreciate, I'm excited to be here. So for Yobe, that you are training, I'm on ground. I'm ready to share my knowledge with you guys whenever you organize that, especially on documentation, SOP development, and some other things. I'm ready to share my experience with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you, Dr. Buka. I think we go now to Dr. Jallo. Dr. Baba Jallo.
Yeah, Femi.
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we
I
can
can
hear
please
you.
spotlight him.
Wow,
Fantastic.
okay, thank you, through this year. My good friend, our erudite scholars, facilitators, national recording, Professor Scholars, Professor Fasila and Teki, my good friend and brother, Chairman Nvma Yobe, the Digital Permanent Secretary, Dr. Musa Abakolere. Please permit me to stand on the already established protocol. I'm actually standing in for the Executive Secretary, Dr. Goja Mohammed, which is not here with us physically, but he's here with us in spirit. I was part of this August, discussion from beginning to the end. And fortunately, it happened in August. Yeah, I think it is essentially colorful and it's part of the early warning science, especially in the veterinary animal science delivery. But in our own end, I want to say this. You see, Yobe said another part of that is part of the country, we are in the early recovery sense of the emergency. This is being confounded by a lot of issues, like farmers harvest clash, continuous by the kidnappers along the highway, and among others. So, sort of the early recovery, based on the report seen, 80% of Yobe and Northeast by expressions are agrarian. And we're talking about Outbreak, it's both from the laptop and the crop trajectory. The laptop components, by coming on board the permanent secretary and the DGS, we have seen a lot of changes in the entire system, where the political will is there. But what I want to emphasize here, as part of the, recommend to all of us here, we need to come up maybe through the Nvma and the veterinary service directorate to have a comprehensive strategic emergency preparedness plan, especially on the priority diseases. Now we are working in the emergency sector. The Executive Secretary of the SEMA, Dr. Goje, that I'm the director of operation, I'm also a veterinarian. You know what is happening there? There are a lot of optimistic,
Hey, I think he got slightly interrupted.
proposal. Just come and go. So I'm calling out to maybe the DGS. I know he's up and doing, and the function. Let's have a strategic plan on the priority diseases. So that from our own side, we're able to leverage partners that are already operating here in the state to keep a priority and work on that. Now look at what the governor, the state, his schedule. He participated 100% during the Anthrax lack of vaccination of the Anthrax in the state. It is quite commendable, and that's also called on other states to emulate from that. So I don't want to talk much. Also, our door is open by the State Emergency Management Agency. Working closely with Nvma and the Veterinary Service Directorate to actualize all our dreams. And this research plan, please, is to be ongoing and systematic. This is like surveillance. Surveillance is continuous, ongoing and systematic. So also research planning. So my third, when we equip ourselves with necessary tools and resources, the way we respond is going to be, less burden. So I wish us, just in all our future endeavors, and thank you for having me in the MS. Over. Thank you.
Able and vibrant Dr. Jallo. Thank you so much for those comments. Dr. Ibrahim Goni, the Deputy Director of Veterinary Services. If we can please unmute him so that he can help us give the closing remark. Dr. Ibrahim Goni.
Yeah. Good afternoon, all. The Permanent Secretary, I hope you are hearing me.
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, the Permanent Secretary, Minister of Agriculture and Natural Resources, the facilitator, Dr. Fahemi, the two speakers, Dr. Keshi and Fashina, thank you very much for the good lecture we have had in the last 2 hours or so. Honestly, we are very grateful, and you have impacted so much into the vets of Yobe State. The veterinary services department in Yobe State have been so lucky, honestly, due to two things. One, our able permanent secretary, we have never had it so good as a ministry until when this permanent secretary came into office. He is a vet, he has been up and doing. In fact, the allegation in the ministry is always that the ministry has been turned to Ministry of Veterinary Services because of the support he has been given to the Veterinary Services Department. Secondly, because of the number of vets we have in the state, we have over 150 or so thereabout. And out of these 150, about 60 to 70% of us are all specialists. So that counts very well for us. Thirdly, I say thank you very much to the ESCO of Nvma Yobe State. They have been doing a wonderful job since they took over the reins of the association. With these few remarks, we are very grateful as a department, and I wish all of us that we inculcate what we learn and put into practice. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you so very much. So with this closing remark from the Deputy Director of Veterinary Services, we would like to also thank every participant. Thank you for joining. And then, of course, to the Permanent Secretary, your presence has raised this occasion in no small measure. Professor Fashina, once again, thank you. To Dr. Teki, thank you. And of course, on behalf of the host, Dr. Bulama, I want to draw the curtain here and thank every one of us for joining. Do have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful time.